So I'll just introduce you to myself, and then my colleague Jonathan will introduce you to himself, and we'll get cracking on this webinar, which we've called Closing the Loop on Data Quality. And for now, what I'm going to do is hide the control panel for this webinar session, but we'll come to questions later. So for now, I'm going to assume then you can all hear me fine, and you can see the screen. So my name is James Blackburn. I'm a consultant here at AgilityWorks. I've been my primary specialism is in and around the EIM space, particularly with regard to the BusinessObjects and SAP offerings in this space. And I'm here with my colleague today, Jonathan Rutter. Jonathan, do you want to see if we can all hear you?
Hi, I'm Jonathan Rutter. I'm a solution lead in the data management space at AgilityWorks. I've been working with SAP products for about 20 years, and I specialize mainly around data management, data quality, data integration, and data migration and cleansing. Okay.
So what we'll do is we'll begin the webinar, and we'll just tell you briefly a little bit about ourselves. A very successful, growing UK-based consulting practice with a specialism. I think one of our key specialisms is data management, and we'll show you some client references on that in the webinar. But today we're here to talk about, let's try to understand what we're here to talk about. What we want to talk to you today about is our aims in this session is to have a brief discussion around the general concept of master data and why its quality matters to business. We want then to illustrate and talk around what we are calling a best practice framework for data quality. So we're drawing on project experience now with some of the leading organizations in the UK that we help to implement data quality initiatives, and we want to present what we think of as a best practice framework for introducing and implementing a data quality initiative into an organization. We then have a particular focus for this webinar, which is the title was called Closing the Loop on Data Quality, and what we're going to talk today about is how to use two particular SAP tools to create a structured remediation process in the organization. So we'll talk a little bit more about what that means, but by way of achieving that, we're going to talk a little bit about a tool called BusinessObjects Information Steward, and to see what role that can play in measuring data quality within an organization. And we'll talk a little bit about SAP Master Data Governance, and we'll see how that can be used as a master data management tool within an organization. And I guess the key point behind this webinar is to see, actually by integrating those two tools, how can you help your business processes, how can you create a structured data quality remediation process within the organization using these two bits of technology. So I'm going to start off with a brief discussion around, why are we here today, what is the issue with data quality, and what risks does it pose for business, and what opportunities do we have in this space to add value to businesses. So just a simple diagram to say, I guess this reflects our initial thoughts about what good data looks like. You might say it's accurate, it's consistent, standard, complete, unique. All these terms are not by any means exhaustive of the concept or of the problem, but I think if we could say of our data that all these terms pertain to our data, that would be a good start. But often we're in a bit of a mess, and we have various examples around what this might look like for a particular organization. Here we're talking about things like, I think there are some pretty stock examples which you might hear, and this is probably quite a good set of examples, which is how does data quality really affect business processes? And things like, do I have the correct email or postal address for my vendor? You can see how that immediately transpires into poor customer service, impacts in your operational processes, things like that. Often data has what we're calling here an unspoken cost, so it can be hard to measure. I think one of the things we want to show today is actually the value you can add when you actually start to measure, to look at the problems that an organization faces, and you start to measure the data quality using a data quality tool. I think often organizations can recognize there are impacts, downstream impacts to poor master data quality, but it can be hard to actually evaluate what those impacts are. We have here some, I think it's a well-trodden path of literature now around data quality. There are various advisory organizations giving various estimates for how much data, poor data quality will cost an organization. I think we can all agree there is a cost to it. It can be quite tricky to measure that cost. We've actually, our latest blog on our website, one of our other colleagues, Brendan Ammersley, is showing in this blog how you can use the SAP toolset to help measure that cost. And we'll see today in the demo one of those features. But I think everyone knows that there is a cost, and we'll show perhaps a little bit on today how we can measure that within an organization. So I think the story goes, and I think this is we're seeing from clients, this is quite a story that is familiar to many people, that they reach a point where they just want to do something about the data. So that, as we see here, there's a tipping point, and what we're here to do today is to see what we as AgilityWorks would suggest organizations do when they hit this tipping point, when they recognize that the data, their own master data, is causing them problems, it's causing knock-on effects for business processes, and it's time to act, it's time to do something about it. So then we're going to move on to what we view as our best practice framework for data quality. And I'm just going to speak you through how we see this framework being implemented in an organization. And I'm going to try then to give the context of the demo we're about to see in terms of this framework. So at the start of the webinar I said, we're here to see not just what the base issue is with data quality and how it can impact an organization, but in particular what we want to see today is how could you use SAP tools to implement a structured remediation process for data quality issues in an organization. So we'll just start and run through the framework. So I begin with just my simple understanding of why you would do data quality even in the first place. And I think at its core, at its root, poor master data quality gets into the system because the standard validations within a system are really insufficient to ensure good quality master data. So I think we all have familiarity with systems where you can enter in perhaps an address and you're told you've given an incorrectly formatted postcode. But what happens if the postcode you've put in is correctly formatted but it's just not the right address for that city, for that vendor? There's a myriad of other different issues you might face, and the systems out of the box, they come pre-configured for a range of different scenarios, but it's impossible for any system to meet your business needs. So
I think that's a very good point, because one of the things around the data quality is to try and move beyond the data just being valid from passing a few very basic validation rules and actually moving to where it's actually accurate. So it's not just valid, it's also accurate. So the street, the town, the postcode, and the country are actually a valid combination. It's not just past a couple of rules that it's, you know, a mandatory field's been filled in or it's the right length or something like that.
So this is why we see the case for any kind of data quality initiative. It's to bridge that gap between what the system would ordinarily check and what's important to your business to actually look at. So we have a cycle, a series of steps that we would say has a start and has an end, and we would describe this as a virtuous circle, in that if you carry one iteration of it, hopefully we should be able to demonstrate that we've made an improvement to the organization, and we should give the grounds for future iterations. So I'll begin with just highlighting what the steps are, and I'll talk you through this. I'll tell you where we're going to focus on today, and we'll run through each of the steps very quickly, and then move ahead. So we begin this cycle with the notion that, of measure, so measure being at the top. And what the cycle is intending us to do is to begin with some simple analysis, some robust but nevertheless perhaps not automated analysis. We're not talking a huge amount of time or money perhaps to be spent on big solutions, but a profiling exercise to see where are the key data quality pain points in your organization. We would look to move from that phase into an improvement phase where we can add immediate value to an organization. I think this phase is a useful phase for organizations to go through with a narrow scope at this time to be able to demonstrate later on to stakeholders that they've really made a difference. They've really increased the quality of the data. We move on to a monitor phase, which is around embedding proper, robust, automated reporting to give the respective stakeholders the right view of what the data quality is within the organization, a preventative phase, and then a remediation phase. And today, particularly, we're going to look at these last two phases in the cycle to show you how you can stop poor quality data getting into the system, and if it does get into the system, how you can structure a remediation process around the fixing of that data. So if we begin with measure, some simple measurements on the screen now. This is the kind of exercise I'm talking about, a profiling exercise that is going to point you and your organization to where the biggest hit is in terms of any project investment. So we can see just a very simple graph, and if we can produce this kind of graph at the outset of the exercise, we can define the problem, we can measure it, and what we haven't done at this point is invested in tools perhaps that are going to give us automated measuring, but we've done this for a reason. We're going to plug in any resources at this point into improving this. We can see here on the graph there's a big opportunity to fix this, and we're going to move straight away potentially to try and improve this issue. And we can see here some of the options around data cleansing. So increasing the worth of your existing data asset. So having identified the problem, what can we do to solve it? Can we add to it? Can we delete some of the data? Can we correct it? Can we enrich it? These types of things, when all said and done, hopefully the idea is to turn your data green. But if these two steps at the outset of the exercise are a bit perhaps not very formal, they're designed to give you an initial assessment of the issue, of the problem, to help gain stakeholder buy-in. What happens when you've got that stakeholder buy-in? What happens when you move to the stage of the project where people actually want to say, on an ongoing basis, what is the state of my master data quality today? What was it last week? What was it last year? And how has it changed? And what impact has your project actually had on the business? It's in the stage that we hope that we can help companies to put in robust monitoring in place of their master data quality. So you're seeing here, I guess the key point behind this stage is to provide key stakeholders with the right information at their level. So if we're talking management, perhaps management wants a dashboard report, an interactive report, maybe a printed report, but something summarized probably that doesn't tell them at the most granular level, this is the record that is a problem in the organization. I suppose managers want to see the highest level of information. But in our monitoring capacity, we probably also want other levels of granularity to be able to tell different types of stakeholders, different types of information. So it might be at the lowest level, analysts want to see the raw data behind these metrics. They want to drill into that data, and they want to be able to quickly and efficiently get that data out of the system and do something with it. So at this stage, what we're looking to do is bed down that level of monitoring with the tools available so that you can control and report back, especially I suppose to project stakeholders, the progress. Moving on to the prevent stage, assuming we've got to this stage, we have done a few things. So we've measured the initial impact of our master data quality issue. So we've seen where's our biggest hit, and we've tried to tackle that head on. We've improved the data, and we've put in some monitoring in place to make sure that it doesn't go off target again. But how can we stop the problem from reoccurring? This section here, called prevent, is around putting in the validations, putting in the things that will stop poor quality master data getting back into the system. And this is around a blend of technology and process. So we can see here in the slide, master data can enter the system from a variety of sources. I've just listed a few. I'm sure in many organizations there's quite a few more. But we can see users can tap the data into the system directly. You might have a partner self-service portal, so you might try and outsource, if you like, your master data creation to your vendors or to your supply or to your customers to get them via a web front end to input their own master data and look after it that way. You might have had migrations from legacy systems, or you might just be in a regular cycle of inputting and uploading third-party data into your system. What we're saying in this slide is we would like to ring-fence your core enterprise data to ensure that from whatever source it was being input from, we could control the data that went finally into the system with data quality validation. In this sense, we're calling this a data quality firewall, something that will protect your enterprise data from whatever input sources it has. And finally, we're going to move on to the remediation stage. And this section is around how you get the process and the technologies to support that process that you have to actually remediate data quality issues in the organization. So what I said here is this is probably a bad example of what a remediation process should look like. Someone tells an analyst to go into the system directly, change the data. This record is broken for this reason. Its address is out of date. It's missing, it's got the wrong payment terms. And the user simply goes straight into the system, tap, 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 saves down the data. This can certainly be effective in the right hands, but what we're suggesting here today is that actually we can do a lot better. And how we can do better is via a couple of things. So with the previous example, what was wrong about it? Well, if someone said, who's changed this record? Why did they change this record? Where was the audit trail for that action? We can't actually really tie that back to a data quality exercise. So if someone said, I changed the bank details or the payment term for this vendor, well, it may be better if we can tie that back to an audit trail and say, actually, this was because we've got a data quality initiative on this set of vendors and we're doing something with it. But moreover, there's a second point, which is that if the user goes into the system to fix a data quality issue, if the system isn't geared up to have the data quality validations that you've put in place elsewhere, it can be a bit of a risky exercise. You might say, I want you to change the data in this way, but unless you have a validation proper in the system, it might be that whoever is remediating the data just makes mistakes along the way. So what we're suggesting here is that our validation process, our remediation process involves two things. One is the audit trail, or the security that comes with a requester/approver process. So the difference between someone that changes the data and someone that approves the change in the system. And secondly, the idea being, when we're making that change in the system, let's make sure that we've got our data quality validation rules in place actually in the master data management system as well. So we're not just measuring it on the one hand, we're not just measuring the data quality, but we're also putting validations into the system right at the heart of the creation process and the change process to ensure that those validations are in place. So at this point, what I'm going to do very briefly is talk to you about measuring data quality with SAP BusinessObjects Information Steward. This is a very short section and we have a lot more to show you on this tool if you're interested. So if you are interested, stay on the line at the end and we'll tell you about some upcoming events. You can hear more about this tool. But for the purposes of today, how I'm positioning Information Steward as a place to store data quality rules. So what we're going to use Information Steward for is, if you look in the middle of this diagram, it will consume data from SAP and non-SAP sources. It will store business rules in one place, all of the data quality validations that you want to measure that are important to your organization. and it will output the failed data, the records, if you like, the vendors, the customers, the materials against which you've written validation rules, and it will output those to a database to be reused later. So one way you might reuse those records is you might tell an analyst to go in and look at those records and to do something with them. But the way we're going to use those records today is to point our master data management system at those records. And we're going to have a structured change process within the master data management system that looks at the records that have failed our validation rules and allows a structured change process for those records. Again, you can use BusinessObjects Information Steward for its own reporting. So we have developed customized reporting layers that go beyond the scope of Information Steward for some clients, but it's a good, I think, baseline for reporting on data quality issues. It comes with a preset set of dashboard report or dashboard reporting functionality, and you can configure that how you like to suit your business. But it's a good baseline for data quality reporting as well. I'll pass you over to Jonathan now, who's briefly going to introduce the tool SAP Master Data Governance, and we'll get on with the demo.
Right, hello. So just to very briefly go through the MDG part of this. As any of you know, with a good master data management tool, you want to store your data centrally. So the one version of the truth concept. You also wanted to provide some tools to enforce the manipulation of the data through the process. So this is about conforming to business process, and this is making sure that the right people get to see the data. So you'll have a requester, some enrichers, approvers, and you can refer data back, reject data requests, etc. So, you know, the full suite of what you want from a data management process, MDG can give you the tool set to be able to enable that within your business. And one of the things that any great MDM tool will give you, and I think MDG certainly does this very well, is to help to support that structured remediation process that James was talking about. So you want to control who can raise the requests. You want to make sure that the visibility of that request gets to the right people who are in the right positions, the stewards, etc., within your organization, and that they've got the validations occurring online so that they can make informed decisions about whether they want to approve that data or maybe just refer it back and ask some questions of why someone wants to make that change. Or obviously, if they just totally disagree with what's being asked of, that they can reject it. The things that we're going to come on to when James does the demonstration is, you know, there's some rules that are set up outside in Information Steward, for example. The problems with the data being identified, so the rules being built so you can monitor that across the whole landscape of your data. If that rule seems sensible to be included in the business as usual online process, MDG working with InfoSteward means that you're only going to store those rules and the logic once, and then MDG can consume those rules and give the online process some feedback. So if you're making a request, you as the requester can be told that you might have not conformed to a rule, and that might just be a warning. You know, you haven't added a VAT registration number for a customer, but of course not every customer you're going to have will have a VAT registration number. So it's a warning. You can carry on without fixing that and still make that request. Others, of course, will be errors, and you won't be able to move your change request forward to the next stage in the process until you've gone and fixed that data, or yourself, you pull the plug on that request because you now know that it's not the sensible thing to do to carry forwards.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So this is just a summary of some of the benefits that we think MDG brings, and certainly in what it brings when you tie it up with Information Steward, getting those online rules and validations, and of course derivations as well. You know, if the system can automatically determine some values, then the less maintenance that has to be done manually is always a benefit as well.
So we're going to move on to the risky part of the webinar now. I don't know if any of you have done live demos before. I've done a few and I never look forward to them, but I'm going to talk you through what we're going to see here, or what we hope to see here today. So what we're going to do first off is we're going to go into a tool called SAP BusinessObjects Information Steward. This is the one that we talked about, can help you measure data quality and can be the central repository for your data quality validation. Within that tool, I'm just going to talk you through a very simple and what is probably quite a contrived scenario we've set up, where we can easily identify a data quality rule that we want to remediate, and we're going to pick that rule and we're going to go to an intermediary application, and we're going to launch, using that application, we're going to launch some change requests, i.e. these are the, we'll see in a moment what these are, but these are telling someone to do something with some master data in the system. Launch some change requests in MDG. We're going to see in those change requests how to identify what's wrong with the record. So if someone's been told you need to do something with this data, well, the first thing they might ask is what's wrong with it. So we'll see how this combination can help you identify that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go full circle. So we're going to remediate the data in MDG. We're then going to rerun the data quality rules and hope to see the improvement showing through in the Information Steward reporting. So just to recap, so we start with our data quality steward, and that he's going to be identifying perhaps the rule for remediation. We're going to launch the request for the change of the incorrect data, and what we're calling a data requester will do that. A functional expert will validate the change, and it will get approved by, if you like, a manager. All these workflows, I think, Jonathan, I think these are configurable in MDG.
Yeah, I mean, so MDG out of the box comes with some standard workflows, but you can configure them to be either rule-based or just sequential. Okay. So yeah, they're highly configurable with MDG. So
what we're going to see is that we've done a workflow, but it's not necessarily the right workflow for your organization, but this is just for the purposes of a demo. And hopefully, in completing this, we're going to complete a cycle of continuous improvement. So let's begin. So I hope now you can all see my screen and you can see that I'm moving to Internet Explorer. I'm going to do this quite slowly actually. I'm not sure of the latency of our connection, so I'm just going to do this very slowly. I'll log into our internal Information Steward tool, and what I'm going to do is show you one we've done earlier. This is our Blue Peter moment, and this is how we're saying in our demo. This is what we're saying the data quality score for the set of customers with our internal test system is. So we're giving our customers a score of 4.43 according to some data quality metrics. So that's not a good score. It's in red at the moment, and I guess the purpose of this exercise is to show you very briefly how an information steward you can split that score out according to precise business rules. So if I just expand out this scorecard, you can see that we've got a series of dimensions across which we're measuring the data quality. So we've got accuracy, completeness, conformity, and consistency. These are just categories, if you like, for the rules that we've put into the system, but they're intended to represent in a language that most people could understand what's wrong with the data. So it's not very accurate, but actually we're doing quite well on the fields that need to be populated. They are populated. And we've got one particular rule here. You're going to have many under each category. So we can see for completeness we've got 4 rules, and they're all complete. But for accuracy we've got 1 rule, and none of our customers actually pertain to this rule. So hopefully you can see in this tool how we can create a scorecard and just evaluate for a particular domain, the customer domain, the overall data quality of that score. Now, what I'd like to move on is to say, well, if I'm a manager, if I'm a business manager, how could I work out what the most important aspect of my poor data quality is to remediate? And in this tool, you've got a nice additional bit of functionality. Already we can see where perhaps the biggest hit is. So our data's not accurate. It's got 0% accuracy. And you'll see this is a contrived example, but we'll show it to you. But one thing you might like is the financial context. So actually, what does that mean in terms of business benefit? And within the tool as well, you have a bit of functionality called financial impact analysis. And I've put a very simple estimate. I think I've given each record about a 10-cent cost, and we've worked out that this is going to cost our organization $38. It's not huge in the scheme of things, but in this example, we're talking perhaps about 20 records, something like that, with the estimate that I've put against it. I think in many of the larger organizations, you might have tens of thousands of vendors, hundreds of thousands of vendors perhaps. And if each one of those records had 10 cents worth of data quality issues against it, you can see how that adds up to a business case pretty quickly. So if I just come out of this screen. So having chosen our rule, if you like, having chosen the thing that we think is important to us. Sorry, we're sharing the screen. I've lost the resolution a little bit. I don't think I can get this. I don't think I can get this off. Okay. So I'm just highlighting here the rule that represents or that underpins this accuracy measure. So we've written a rule, and this is just a rule that we've written to demonstrate to you guys what the system can do. But we've written a rule that says name2 should be a 5-character long string if the customer's account group is 0001. So we've written that rule into the system. We've measured the data quality of our customer database. It doesn't stack up. It doesn't pass the rule. None of our customers do. So what we're going to see here is how to take that rule and to remediate it in MDG. So what I'll do is I'll move on to the. I'm going to now talk you through what we have here, which is an intermediary application. And SAP has now created a package where this application is actually integrated directly into SAP MDG. So we're seeing, if you like, perhaps a little bit of a beta version. And this application, okay, never do live demos. Okay, I'm just going to log back in. This application, you can already see it's found us the rule name. So this is finding us the rule name from our data quality measuring system, Information Steward. And if we click refresh, what this application is doing is it's showing us the records that have failed that rule. So if I'm a manager, perhaps I might want to prioritize certain vendors, certain customers, the ones that have failed this rule, for example. And you can see these are their customer numbers. So we've got customer number 1, 19, and these are the descriptions. And the one that I'm just going to focus on is our data management practice director has created a test customer.
So one of the other things that you'll see there is it's got the change request and the change request ID columns. So this is looking at the data that's actually in MDG. So if any of those records were in a change request, you could see that that record was still in process. So you might not be as interested as in getting involved in a request that's still in progress because somebody might not just have completed the data yet. So that gives you an idea of whether you should get excited about that record or not, really.
Okay. And what we're going to do is just choose the correct change request type. And by clicking a button, we should be able to create a change request. And we've got the green tick is always good. We've got a green tick to say we've created a change request in MDG. So now when I'm going to hand over to Jonathan to talk you through a bit more about MDG, but we're going to log into MDG and see that change request. So if I briefly log out. So this is MDG, our master data management tool.
So as you'd have seen on the previous screen that James was on when he launched it, it came back with a message that had the 1017 on the end. So it was telling us that we'd created change request 1017 from the remediation tool. This is now showing all of the change requests that are in process for the user. I think we've logged in as a J Rubio in this example. So if we now click onto that change request, so you can see the information. It's the type of change request, the description that's been populated through from the remediation tool, and in the notes tab it shows what the rule was that's failed and why we've got this change request, so what we're trying to remediate as part of this change request. So we now know where to go and we know what we want to change to make this pass that rule.
So very briefly, I think at this point, can we just take a slight minor detour? So I want to show, I want to just check. So we're being asked, do we want to approve or reject the change request? So our role here, we've jumped a step, but our role here is as the approver or rejector. If we check the status of this customer record in our master data management system, this being SAP MDG, we're now getting a warning to say, name 2 should be length 5 for account group 0001.
So what we've actually done here is, I mean, it's a full error so that we can't actually proceed with this change request unless we fix this piece of data. But what's actually going on in the background is that MDG is calling up the information steward rule here. So we're passing all the customer data over to info steward. That's executing the rules that we've set as being relevant for business as usual real-time processing in MDG, and that's returning back the fact that the name 2 field hasn't got the right length because it's an account group 0001. So this is happening real time based on the rules set in Info Steward that we wanted to become part of the MDG online process.
Okay.
So to be able to proceed with this change request as it is an error, we need to edit this record and make it valid.
So I'm just going to edit the customer detail. We'll check this.
So now that we've put in the correct length of data into the name 2 field, it's now saying that that customer as a whole is now valid and accurate. So we can now proceed to send that for approval. So we've got a predefined workflow in this system here. So from this requester or validator or fixer or whatever you want to call this role, that's then going to go on for further approval.
So we can just briefly demonstrate this. So we're going to log in as, if you like, the manager in this case. And when we look under his change requests, there's none that's been created by him, but we should hopefully have one that's awaiting processing.
Yeah, so as you'll see, it's the same change request number 1017, and the description and the status have come from the remediation tool, and it's come through from the J Rubio user.
Okay.
So this user will maybe execute the check himself. You know, you could have different validations happen in different parts of the process for different users. This is coming back as valid. He'll probably have a look at the notes field himself. The J Rubio user might have added his own notes to say that, look, right, okay, I found this is an error that I've been received. I've now edited it and put this value in, so he can pass on some notes and attachments. Once this user is happy with the data, then he can say approve. Obviously, if he's not happy with this data for whatever reason, he can reject that. think we'll just approve it because we wouldn't be much use.
Yeah. Okay. So at this point, we've remediated now the data. So I guess what we want to do is rerun the data quality rules and see this customer disappear. So we can just very briefly show you that I think I have to reload the thing. I'm conscious of time, Jonathan. I think what we'll do is we'll set the rules running, and perhaps we'll also show in SAP that changed. Perhaps we could show in SAP the customer master record that's just changed, and then perhaps move on, I think, to the next section of the pack. And then move on to some questions. So we're just going to set this running. So what this is doing, Information Steward is now tapping straight back into our SAP system. And it's the idea being it's going to run the data quality rules. We'll see the change in our scorecard, and then we should see the improvement. So what I'll do is I'll just log in, I think, to show you what it was, customer 11, into our I don't know my vendors. I don't know my vendors and my customers. Sorry, everyone. Okay, so I think it was customer 11, and we can see here now. We've just input this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 into the name 2 section for this customer number 11. So that. Okay. Okay. And we're seeing now, I think, the field change as well.
Yeah, so you can see on the change log on that customer that's, if you double click into that.
Okay.
So we can see the date and time of that change, so you know, we're not doing any magic tricks here. So the MDG is updated, and because the change request has proved it, it's moved the data straight into the live customer master area here. Okay.
So what I think we'll do is let's move on to some questions, I think, as time's getting a bit away from us. So what we want to do now is just to briefly relate some of our experience in the data quality and data governance space, summarize what we've seen today, and then take some Q&A. So in the data quality space particularly, we've been implementing now a data quality program at Vodafone since January of last year, so it's been an ongoing program. And we've covered quite a wide range of vertical functions and master data objects. So the vertical functions we've covered: supply chain, finance, HR. We've also looked at the integrity of their user databases, so where you have different systems like Microsoft AD and even the central user administration database in SAP. We've covered that breadth of verticals across a wide range of master data objects. And what we've done is implemented a complete end-to-end data quality solution for them using SAP BusinessObjects Information Steward. But also, as you can see, we've taken the reporting one step further than you can actually have in Information Steward. So we've used the BusinessObjects platform to provide different levels of reports for different stakeholders within the organization. So managers can see the progress over time, and here the graphs are going up, which is good. But also analysts can use intermediary-style reports to drill right down from a rule level into the failed data, to access flat files, send out PDFs, that type of thing.
So at the end of June this year, we went live with an MDG solution at Reckitt Benckiser. The procurement experts within Reckitt Benckiser knew that if they had better access to quality information about their product lines and the suppliers they get it from, that they could really make some cost savings in refining their purchasing process. So that went live in June 28th. It's a fully custom-built solution in MDG, so custom data model, custom UI, custom processes, and custom validations and derivations. And Reckitt Benckiser believe that they can save £7 million a year in procurement savings, so that's been a really exciting product that we've delivered there. Also, at the moment, we're working with Vodafone, GL account customer and cost center. Actually, since I've put this slide together, we've now started looking at the potential of doing profit centers and cost center groups as well. And we are working with Johnson & Johnson on MDGC, so a custom master solution, which will be going live in the next couple of months. So there's a lot of MDG going on, and we're working out with some really big names in that space at the moment.
So that's us. So let's just summarize everything what we've seen today. So hopefully what we've tried to show you is a little bit around why you might want a structured remediation process for fixing the data quality issues, and what the benefits are from that process. So we saw how you might measure the data quality using Information Steward, but then we saw how you might integrate that tool into your master data management system to enable the same validations that you're using in your measurement stage to be used by your master data management tool to stop analysts putting in that poor quality data. So we saw how to prevent issues in your master data management system, and then we saw how that could give you an added benefit to a structured remediation process. So if you put your validations, if you've gone to the trouble of putting your validations into something like MDG, and it could be MDG, but the architecture that we're proposing also supports, we can integrate these validation checks into just about any master data management system, as it's technology agnostic really. We're using a web service technology to do this. But if you've gone to the trouble of putting those checks in your master data management system, then the idea is make sure that you have your remediation process in that system as well. And then by doing that, then you can prioritize tasks for the remediation on a rule-by-rule basis. So a manager could say, this is the rule I want to focus on, this is the data quality issue that's important to me, therefore I want people to look at this. And the analysts at the back end of that process can see what's wrong with the data. So they get a clear instruction, your data is wrong for this reason, so this is why we're asking you to do something about it. Jonathan, is anything else from you on?
No, I mean, I just think it's really good to be able to put these two kind of products together. I mean, having the data quality reported on its own is really good. Having a good governance solution, as James says, no matter what the technology is you want to use, is also great. But putting them together where, you know, you can go around in that cyclic process of we found something wrong, let's repair it, but let's prevent it from happening again. I mean, it's really good for the master data space, I think that. Okay.
So I think at this juncture, we're just on 10 to perhaps quarter to 2. So does anyone have any questions? Yeah. So what I'll try and do, if anyone has any questions, firstly I'm going to try my best to unmute